Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the PCPD, I would like to first of all thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend the seminar today. May I also express our sincere thanks to Guobin for agreeing to be a guest speaker for today's seminar. In this section, I will try to give you an overall view of the developments in the privacy landscape in the past few years, especially since I took on the appointment as the Privacy Commissioner in 2020. First, let us take a look at the major developments in privacy law around the world. I believe that most of you are aware of the impact of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation of the EU. The GDPR was passed in 2018 and came into effect in 2018. And I would say that it continues to serve as the golden standard and reference point for the development of data protection law or privacy protection law elsewhere in the world. And its robust framework, I would say, has influenced the legislative developments in other jurisdictions like Indonesia, the Mainland, and also the Philippines. In particular, for Mainland China, that is a comprehensive legal framework for personal information protection and security and data security protection that is underpinned by 3 pieces of legislation, namely the cybersecurity law, the data security law, and the PIPL, the Personal Information Protection Law. And you will notice that both the data security law and the PIPL were enacted in 2021. Actually, the PIPL is the Mainland equivalent of the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, the legal basis of our privacy protection, as Professor Ju has just mentioned, lies in the Basic Law, Article 39 of the Basic Law, and also the Personal Data Protection Ordinance, which came into effect in 1996. And I'm very happy to report that actually Hong Kong is the first jurisdiction in the Asia-Pacific region having its own data protection law. And since 1996, the ordinance, the PDPO, was amended twice. The first time in 2012 to introduce the direct marketing provisions in response to the October's Ba Tak Tong incident. And the second time in 2021 to introduce the new doxing regime, which I will explain in greater detail later. Over the past few years, I must say, the social unrest in 2019 and also the emergence of new technologies has brought about unprecedented challenges to our work. These include, for example, a significant rise in the number of personal data breach incidents, in the number of personal data fraud cases, and also in the number of doxing cases, especially in the earlier period of 2019-2020. On top of that, the challenges posed by the emergence of new technologies and AI, artificial intelligence, together with the extensive use of smartphones and social media, also brought significant changes in the nature and scope of our work. Given the time, I would like to highlight 3 particular aspects today, namely promoting cybersecurity to address the risk of data breaches, encouraging the ethical and responsible use of AI in the digital era, and also our efforts in combating doxing offense. On the first subject, promoting cybersecurity, let me start with some good news. In a survey conducted by my office last year on the cybersecurity measures taken by enterprises, you see from this graph that on average, the Cybersecurity Readiness Index of enterprises in Hong Kong jumped by 5.8 points to 52.8 points last year in 2024. And it is shown by the dotted line in the middle of the graph. And actually, for the larger corporates, the Cybersecurity Readiness Index reached an all-time high of 73.1 points at the managed level. And you may be wondering, what are the causes for these improvements? Actually, from our survey, we found that the causes for these improvements is because enterprises did take proactive steps to strengthen their cybersecurity measures. For example, by carrying out cybersecurity risk assessments and also by carrying out regular review on their critical IT systems. Notwithstanding the heightened awareness, let us take a look at another set of figures, the number of data breach notifications. From this graph, you will see that the number of data breach notifications, which we received back in 2020, the year when I was appointed as the Privacy Commissioner, was 103. Those were the good old days. But in 2024, it rose to 203 cases. The figure is almost double that of 2020. And actually, for 2024, if you look at the number of cases which involve hacking attacks, the number was 61 cases, accounting for 30% of the total. Other than hacking cases, the other common causes of data breach include loss of documents or portable devices, inadvertent disclosure of personal data by fax, email, or post. Actually, if we just take into account the number of cases which involved hacking, loss of documents, or inadvertent disclosure of personal data, they already accounted for about 75% of the total number of cases. Here on this slide, I've set out how we handle a data breach notification from the beginning to the end to facilitate your understanding of our work. Very briefly, once we receive a data breach notification, we will try to carry out a preliminary assessment of the nature and also of the scope of the data breach, including the number of personal data, personal subject affected, the kinds of personal data involved. And after this preliminary assessment, we may decide to make preliminary inquiries if further informations are to be collected. Sometimes, if we got sufficient information and if the scale of the breach is significant, we will initiate investigation right away. By investigating into the matter, please don't mistake all these investigations as targeting the organizations in question. We are not doing that. We are actually trying to help the organizations identify vulnerabilities in their information systems and uncover the root causes of the data breaches in question. And in cases of contravention, in case after we have commenced the investigation, we have looked into all the relevant facts of the case, we conclude that that is contravention of the privacy ordinance, we may issue an enforcement notice to the organization in question, requesting it to rectify the abnormalities, the vulnerabilities in these information systems, and also to prevent similar incidents from occurring in future. Let me illustrate our work by means of two examples. In these two cases, both involving non-profit-making organizations, hackers exploited vulnerabilities in the information systems of the organizations in question to intrude into their information systems. And in one case, the case to the left, we found that outdated firewalls and the absence of multi-factor authentication enabled the hacker to successfully gain access to the organization's network and deploy ransomware. And in another case, the case to the right, which involved a sports club, there was no effective detection measure at all to identify malicious activities. And the club had not even enabled the intruder logout function for repeated unsuccessful login attempts. And can you imagine that all these deficiencies allowed the hacker to conduct brute force attack of over 40,000 times without interruption? So at the end of the day, after these 40,000 times of brute force attack, the hacker managed to get into the system and deploy ransomware. And so after our investigation, basically we found that both organizations were in breach of the privacy ordinance, and therefore we served enforcement notices on both organizations to request them to rectify the vulnerabilities in the systems and also to take measures to prevent future incidents from happening. Move on from cybersecurity. Let me now turn to AI security. On the subject of AI security, I'm happy to report that in recent years, the global community has taken meaningful steps towards responsible AI governance. I have set out 3 key milestones here. The first one, the Bradley Declaration was endorsed by 20 countries, including the Mainland, in November 2023. The Bradley Declaration actually calls for international cooperation to manage risks and challenges brought by AI, and they recognize the risks and challenges brought by AI formally at the meeting in Bradley. And the second key milestone is, I would say, a historic moment, which happened at the UN General Assembly. The UN General Assembly passed a resolution on AI in March 2024. And the resolution underscored the importance of developing AI systems that is safe, secure, and reliable. And finally, more recently, in the Paris AI Action Summit earlier this year, in February this year, 64 jurisdictions endorsed the statement on inclusive and sustainable AI for people and the planet. And for this statement, it emphasized that harnessing the benefits of AI to foster economic and societal developments depended on, and it is important, advancing the safety and trust of AI. So you will see that AI safety or AI security is a theme which underlies all these declarations, resolutions, or statements. And the international community is collaborating on this front. And that is why in Hong Kong, we have been spending a lot of efforts in promoting AI security and AI safety to organizations and members of the general public. Let us now take a snapshot of how different jurisdictions respond in this area. At one end of the spectrum, you will see that some jurisdictions like China, the EU, and South Korea have gone down the route of enacting specific legislation or regulations dedicated to regulating AI. In the Mainland, for example, a number of regulations were enacted regulating the content generated by AI, labeling requirements, or security requirements. However, according to our research, most other jurisdictions, like Singapore, Hong Kong, and the UK, they have adopted a softer or more sectorial approach by issuing guidelines or by issuing industry-driven regulations. So apparently, there is differences in views among different jurisdictions as to how to address the risks and challenges brought by AI. Back in Hong Kong, I would say that although Hong Kong has no overarching regulation tailor-made for AI for the time being, the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, which is a piece of principle-based and technology-neutral legislation, applies equally to the use of AI, and data users are bound by the provisions of the Privacy Ordinance, irrespective of the technology adopted for the collection of personal data, the processing of data, or the use of data. And for us, my office, as the statutory body responsible for the administration and for the enforcement of the Privacy Ordinance, we are committed to promoting safe, responsible, and healthy AI development while safeguarding personal data privacy. And here's how we do it. To address the security and privacy risks of AI, and to better understand how AI is being used in the local community, we have carried out 2 surveys and 2 compliance checks in the past 2 years, in 2023 and in 2024. The 2 compliance checks covered the use of AI by 88 organizations and the impact of such use on personal data privacy. And I'm happy to report that the result of our compliance checks basically shows that organizations tended to adopt a cautious attitude in the use of AI. And we found that the organizations covered by the compliance check all adopted security measures in the use of AI or in the processing of personal data using AI. And I would say that is a very happy or healthy phenomenon. On top of that, our compliance test did not find any single incident of breach of the privacy ordinance. On the international front, we have also taken on leadership roles as we are the co-chair of the AI working group of the Global Privacy Assembly. I would say this enables us to make contributions to the formulation of collaborative actions by different data protection authorities and also to the discussions at the international arena. On top of that, we also publish a lot of guidance materials and leaflets to educate the public on how to use AI safely. On the subject of guidelines, I would like to refer you to 4 of our guidance materials which we have published on the subject of AI. The first one of which is the Guidance on the Ethical Development and Use of AI, which we published in 2021. And this was followed in 2024 by the Model Personal Data Protection Framework. These 2 guidances, I would say they all reflect international standards and also the best practices in AI governance. So for those of you who are interested in establishing AI governance within your organizations, I would strongly recommend you to take a look at the model framework because it is a very practical guidance note, and it is based on general business process. It contains governance recommendations in every process of the procurement, customization, implementation, and use of AI. To promote the use of, to safe use of AI chatbots, we also published the 10 tips for users of AI chatbots in 2023 to facilitate the safe use of AI chatbots. More recently, we published the checklist on guidelines for the use of generative AI by employees. And this is, again, I would say, a very practical guidance material for organizations to develop their own internal AI guidance or AI policy. So much for AI. Let me now turn to the last subject of my session, which is our effort to combat doxing offenses. As many of you are aware, we have amended the Privacy Ordinance back in 2021 to introduce the new doxing offense under a 2-tier structure. So what is doxing? Under the amendment ordinance, doxing is defined as the disclosure of the personal data of a data subject without the relevant consent of the data subject. And the keywords are here. The keywords are without the relevant consent of the data subject. And the requisite mens rea or criminal intent is an intent to cause specified harm to the data subject or any family member of the data subject. The other mens rea is the doxer is being reckless as to whether such specified harm is caused or not. And so long as the disclosure is done with the relevant criminal intent, this constitutes the first tier doxing offense, which is a summary offense. For the second tier offense, which is an indictable offense, other than the elements of doxing, which I have mentioned, on top of that, we also need to have evidence showing that the disclosure actually causes specified harm to the data subject or any family member of the data subject. In other words, where the disclosure results in specified harm, it will constitute the more serious doxing offense. And what constitutes specified harm? It includes, for example, harassment, pestering, threat, intimidation, bodily or psychological harm. We have tried to define the term widely under the amendment ordinance so as to provide the greatest protection to the victim. And in order for us to effectively combat doxing, the amendment ordinance also confers investigation power, criminal investigation power, and prosecution power on the Privacy Commissioner. And I must say I'm one of the lucky few privacy commissioners who has this criminal investigation and prosecution power. Actually, as part of our new powers, I also have power to stop, search, and arrest any person, any suspect who is suspected of having committed the doxing offense. And I'm very happy to report that over the past few years, over 3 years now, most of our arrest operations were done by my staff without the involvement of the police. And under the amendment ordinance, I also have power to apply for a warrant to search and enter premises and to seize materials for investigation. In addition to our investigation powers, in a doxing case, I would say it is equally important to remove the doxing messages in question ASAP in order to minimize the harm and distress caused to the victims. And in order to achieve this, we do have power under the amendment ordinance to issue cessation notices to operators of online platforms to request them to remove the doxing messages in question. An important feature, however, of this power is that it has extraterritorial application, meaning that I can serve a cessation notice on the operators of overseas social media platforms. And this power is very important. I can show you some statistics here. Actually, since 2021, we issued a total of over 2,000 cessation notices to 53 online platforms to request the removal of over 33,000 doxing messages. And we managed to achieve a compliance rate of over 96%. I'm very happy to say that it is notwithstanding that the majority of the online platforms are operated overseas. And that is exactly why we need the extraterritorial power. And during the same period, we also arrested 63 persons for doxing-related offenses. Summarizing, I will just give you 2 statistics to show the effectiveness of our enforcement work. Over the past 3 years period, actually the number of doxing-related complaints dropped by over 40% when we compare the figure for 2024 to the figure for 2022, which is the first year after the commencement of the amendment ordinance. Secondly, on top of that, there was a significant drop of over 90% in the number of online doxing messages, which were uncovered by our proactive online patrols. So you will see the effectiveness of our enforcement action. And I'm very happy to say that we have achieved this enforcement result without any compromise of our freedom of speech or online freedom of speech, and without affecting the lawful operation of online platforms in Hong Kong. To conclude this part, I would like to recommend the latest edition of our book on personal data privacy law to you. I believe that the latest edition of this book is by far the most comprehensive resource available concerning the privacy ordinance and also the work of my office. Other than providing you with an in-depth analysis of the data protection principles and the requirements of the ordinance, the new book also contains 3 entirely new chapters covering the new anti-doxxing regime, an overview of the Mainland's PIPL, or Personal Information Protection Regime, and also the mechanism for transferring personal data from Hong Kong to the Mainland, including the latest facilitation measures for transferring personal information in the Greater Bay Area. And this part will be further elaborated by my colleague Joanne later. To complete the picture, other updates in the new book include a comparison table on the major differences between the Privacy Ordinance, PIPL, and the GDPR. We have also included recent Administrative Appeals Board decisions and court cases, our recent investigation reports, and also the more recent guidelines and other publications in this new edition. In particular, the guidelines on the ethical development and the use of AI, the implementation guidelines for our new anti-doxxing regime, and also the guidelines for on the handling of data breaches. And with that, may I pass the time to my co-editor of the latest edition, Professor Zhu. Thank you.